And now CRM Audio presents Captain Redlaces Power BI Corner with Business Solutions MVP Scott Sewell. You give us 10 minutes, we'll give you Power BI.
Hello, Scott.
Hey, Joel.
Welcome back for another Power BI tip. How are you doing today?
It's good. It's good to be here live in person with you.
Yeah, in the same room and everything. Wow. I was prepared for your visit. I don't have any red shoelaces, but I did wear my festive red shirt today.
I like it. It's very festive. Very, very holiday spirit. Nice.
Thank you. So you got a tip for us today?
Yeah, I thought about, as we talked about in the last tip, we talked a little bit about some findings I was having about the different OData feeds. And I thought I might expand a little bit about that into some performance challenges and some performance tips that I ran across as I was working on this.
Okay.
So Power BI, if I'm pointing Power BI from the desktop to CRM, in most cases I'm pointing to CRM through the OData feeds. And those OData feeds have the old style and then the new style, the web API style.
Yeah, I think last time we talked about how you were getting better results with the old one than the new one.
Yeah, and the trick is, a little bit to expand on that, is a concept that Power BI refers to as query folding. Query folding is really the idea that Power BI is able to take the query that you want to work on, and before it submits it to the server, it consolidates it, packages it up sort of folds it up like a nice little envelope and says, "Hey server, here's the data that I would like back." The server takes that, interprets it, and hands you back just the data that you're interested in. A much more efficient process because all of that's being done at the server.
Right. Okay.
When query folding fails, Power BI is unable to turn that into a nice query, so it just says, "Hey, server, give me the whole data set. Give me the whole account table, all the fields, and then I'll sort it out later as to what it is."
Okay.
And effectively that says, the example I had the other day was I was asking for the account ID and the account name. And in one case, it was taking about a few seconds and it would give me back about 9 or 10K worth of data, which is just those two fields. In the other case, it would take minutes. It would take nearly 10 minutes, and it was returning 230 megabytes of data in order to then be filtered out to just the handful of records that I needed.
Because you might need those 10 million accounts.
Right, but because the problem is Power BI can't tell CRM exactly what it needs when it can't fold that query up.
Okay.
It says, "Give me all the data, and then I'll sort it all out when I get it down locally." In the first case, it's able to say, "Give me just the data that I want, the account ID, the account name, and base it on the created on date of records that were created this week." And that was a very efficient query. So the difference in the two, the folding aspect, plays into more than just those two web APIs.
Okay.
I've run into cases
where... is the new one using folding and the old one didn't? Or what's the difference?
The old one is folding it correctly. So the old one is working and it's returning the data effectively, nicely packaged in a very clean data set. So the old one is much, much faster right now.
Okay.
I think it's a result of a bug in the new adapter. One thing that I didn't realize until I was sitting with some of the developers the other day, and one of the things that's interesting is the Power BI adapter for CRM is written by the Power BI team, not by the CRM team.
Okay.
So as a result, maybe if like you and I and anyone else who's worked with the CRM data set, there's a lot of nuance to it.
Right.
And I think that they've taken a generic OData approach to it, and they haven't worked out some of the nuances of the CRM data set. And so as a result, the new version is not that efficient yet.
Okay.
I say yet because I'm hopeful that they will have improved it over the next few iterations.
Aren't they coming out with a new version every month or something?
It feels like it. It's definitely a new version of the desktop app every month, but I think they're getting some enhancements in there and bug fixes to the CRM adapter each month. But this idea of query folding goes beyond just those two adapters. It also goes into if consider if you're working on a data pull and you want to pull back your opportunity table. And you want to pull back a handful of, and you're interested in maybe the name, the customer name, the owner of it, and when it was, what the status was, and maybe a estimated value and an actual value. Handful of fields like that you need. You don't need every field off the opportunity table, but you need enough to build your dashboards with. Okay. In that case, maybe you start the idea of you start it and you filter out most of the fields that you need, but you leave in quite a bit, and then you add a filter saying, oh, you know what, I actually only need this year's data. And then you come back later and say, well, I'm only interested in data in opportunities that are still open. So you filter it again, and then maybe you say, well, I don't really need the actual close date because there's no actual close date on an open opportunity. So you filter it again. And so you kind of go through this iterative process to build out the data set that you're interested in. Maybe you've tried to graph it and say, well, I need to add this one other field back in.
Yeah.
That process of iterating over and over on the right-hand side, you'll see this list of actions that you've taken to grow. And it will show each starting with the selection of the table that you're interested in, and then you see the number of the first filter that you applied and the fields that you removed, and then maybe you expanded some fields and you then maybe applied a different filter to it, or you deleted some fields that you had previously expanded. So there's like kind of this growing list of things that take place, and as you build that list up, that query becomes too complex for it to fold.
Yeah.
In my first data sets, and then I was working with a colleague the other day, that query set became so complex that the query was just taking an ugly amount of time to run.
Yeah.
What we did was we went back and said, consolidate. Okay, let's move all the fields that we're going to remove. We'll move that into one step. Here's all the filters we want to apply. We're going to move that into another step. And here's a bunch of things that we don't care about, so we're going to eliminate that very early on in the query.
Okay.
So by doing that, it actually simplified it and it allowed the folding to take place. And so CRM was able to return just the data we needed rather than dumping the whole data set and letting us figure it out later.
So you're thinking that where these queries get really slow, they might be overly complex, and you're exceeding their ability to fold the query.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's the, like, you've got multiple steps and it is not able to rationalize it, turn it into a simple query because you've done several things over and over, and it really doesn't know that it can consolidate all that down to one level and turn it into a simple query. Whereas if you clean it up and make it simple, first off, it's going to be, for no other reason, but it's going to be easier to manage so that all your field where you've eliminated extra fields or removed other fields that you don't need, that's all in one step. And so if you need to add something back, you just go to that one step and change it. All your renames of fields where you've put a semantic layer in and said, I'm going to rename all these fields so they're they reflect what's on the front of the query. I'm doing that near the end.
Okay.
And so they're all clean, and so it produces a data set. I think that's the approach that I'm going to recommend if we're working against CRM data.
Which
and
is
go
probably
through
a
the
good
OData.
thing to do anyway. Make it as I remember back in our SSRS salad days, we used to that was a big thing where you get a query that you have too many joins, or you have self-referential joins, or weird CTEs that reference CTEs that reference CTEs, those kind of things. I can't believe I said CTE. Yeah. That's the first time in 2 years I've said that.
When you're hitting multiple filtered views, there's like hitting two, maybe three of them is fine. You hit 4 or 5, and your performance is just going to go.
So you start out with the new OData feed.
The old
it's too slow. You clean up, optimize your query. It's still too slow. Is the best answer still move to the old one?
At this moment, until we have a fix for that, and this is when we're talking about when I'm connecting like a data set directly to CRM, and that's really performance-wise, that's appropriate for data sets 50, 100,000 records. When you push beyond 100,000 records, you're starting to get into a zone where Microsoft is saying, timeout. You really need to look at offloading that data off of your transaction system into an offline data store and then report off of it there, as opposed to dimming the lights every time you run this query.
Okay. Yeah. So that's general. I guess you'd call that query hygiene.
Yeah, query hygiene is a nice way of saying it.
So can you can't control the folding, but I think you said if it's a SQL source, you can see what folding is going on.
So in some cases, depending on what the data store you're hitting, if you right click on the entity on the right hand side over in the list of fields, list of entities in your Power BI Query Manager, you can right click, and I think one of the menu options is View Folding.
Yeah,
and you can see that. Right now, if you try to do that against the OData feed, it's grayed out. It's not letting you see what's going on there at this point.
Okay. So Kenny Rogers is right. You got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them.
Yeah, then know when to walk away.
Sometimes you walk away in disgust.
Oftentimes.
The data's terrible. Okay, well, thanks for the tip.
Yeah. We'll talk a little bit more at times about what happens when you then pass that 100,000 record limit. What do you really need to do? What do you need to think about?
Things blow up, right?
Things blow up.
All right. Well, thanks, Captain.
Thank you.